This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and sometimes we see things again and they get a little bit bigger, sometimes a little bit better. That's mostly the case with the Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga 14, as you might guess. It's the 14-inch version of the Yoga that first came out as a 12.5-inch Ultrabook. Well, for those of you who thought 12.5 inches is a little too small, it's kind of hard to see, especially with that full HD display. 14 inches might be just what you wanted. More upgradable internals, dedicated graphics inside too. We're going to look at it now. There are two schools of thought when it comes to Ultrabooks. Some people think they should be as small and light as possible. Then there are those people who want something slim and light, but they want it bigger. Witness the fact that originally the Ultrabook was supposed to be a 13-inch laptop that was very thin and had Intel components inside, and we've seen ones go all the way up to 15.6 inches. So now there's something for everybody. This is a Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga 14. Pretty much everything we knew about the Yoga already, the 12.5-inch original model, is the same here. You got the same lift and lock keyboard on it, touchscreen, full HD IPS display, great Lenovo keyboard in terms of typing, dual band Intel Wi-Fi AC, all that kind of stuff in here, but it's bigger. It's 14 inches instead. It's also heavier. Now, these kind of Yoga Ink convertible designs, you can use it flat, you can use it in presentation mode we just had, and you can use it as a tablet, for example. Well, these are heavier because of the durability issues. They have to build heavier hinges on these things, all that sort of thing, so this is going to be heavier than a non-Yoga Ink product. But still, at a 14-inch laptop at 4.2 pounds, that's actually not too bad, and that's exactly what this weighs. Obviously, looks figure in here. If you're a ThinkPad person, you're going to like the look of this. Traditional ThinkPad's kind of raven black, understated finish. Very durable, very strong. That's hallmark of Lenovo products right there. So if you looked at the consumer Yogas, like the Yoga 13.2 or even the Yoga 3 Pro, and you said, you know, I want something sturdier than that, beefier keyboard, that sort of thing, well, this is what you should be looking at in that case. It is sturdy. There is just no flex, no play. Our usual ThinkPad lid that we have over here with the little glowing logo, the eye here, when it's asleep, that blinks and flashes. Very sturdy hinges here. Durability, generally speaking, will never be an issue with this. One thing it does lose is the pen. There is no pen here, so those of you who are artists or avid note-takers and want that Wacom pen that comes with the ThinkPad Yoga 12.5, some models, not all models there, that can be confusing, but anyway, there is no pen option here. There is no active digitizer built into the display, so if you go out and you get one of those ThinkPad pens, it's not going to work with this. You can use a capacitive stylus, though. Yes, you can. It's pretty slim, 0.8 inches, and weighs, like I said, 4.2 pounds, so you're not looking at the lightest of the light Ultrabooks here. Still, compared to most laptops, that is fairly light, and for something that is robust, rugged, and Yogas, it's just fine. What is surprising is with the 12.5-inch original ThinkPad Yoga on top, the footprint hasn't gotten that much bigger. So for those of you who are worried, really, it's actually very impressive given the fact that this is a pretty compact unit itself in terms of overall footprint. So you're not carrying around a lot more. The original ThinkPad Yoga does weigh 3.5 pounds versus 4.2 pounds, so there is a weight difference there. Port selection is healthy on this. We have the charging port for the rectangular charging connector here, and this is also compatible with Lenovo's one-link docks. You have a charging USB 2.0 port here for your legacy stuff and for sleep and charge. Usual combo 3.5mm headphone jack. Full-size SD card slot. The card does go in all the way, doesn't stick out at all. So for those of you who always carry a card in the unit, happy times there. On this side, we have controls in case you're using it in tablet mode. Now, at 4.2 pounds, I don't know if you're going to be so compelled to use it in tablet mode, but even if you're using it in presentation mode or tent mode, that can be handy. Power button right there, your volume rockers, rotation lock, two USB 3.0 ports, and a full-size HDMI port. So reasonably good connectivity. No built-in Ethernet, so you're going to want to use a USB Ethernet adapter on the road if you need Ethernet when you're traveling. Plenty of ventilation holes on here, and given the fact that we have a good old-fashioned normal Intel Core i5-4210U 1.7 GHz with turbo boost to 2.6 GHz, CPU inside Haswell 4th generation, not the M 5th generation, but that's a good thing in this case. You're getting more performance. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But anyway, also NVIDIA GT840M, dedicated graphics, 2 gigs of video memory in here, switchable with Intel HD 4400 graphics. So if you are on the road, you don't have to worry about the dedicated GPU killing your battery life unless you are doing something like playing, well, Metro Last Light, which we're going to show you, actually does play on this. So this is an interesting laptop. We always think of ThinkPads as those rugged, well-made, great keyboard kind of businessy laptops. This one's got the oomph for gaming. And more practically speaking, also, this guy is good for video editing, Photoshop, if you want a performance boost. Intel HD 4400 actually is okay for Photoshop, but even better this way. Those of you who want to do some like CAD work, that sort of thing, definitely a good mid-range performer. For gaming, it's nice. We'll talk about that more later. Regular Phillips head screws hold the bottom cover on here. You do have to remove the 3 little rubber covers on the bottom here. Not the feet, the 3 little rubber covers if you want to access all the screws that are under here as well. And you can take off this bottom plate. One thing that's nice about this over the original ThinkPad Yoga is the memory is actually socketed. You have 1 RAM slot in this. Now, right now, the biggest you can get in a laptop RAM DIMM is 8 gigs anyway, so that means you're at 8 gigs for maximum. That's what this ships with. You also have a 2.5-inch standard 7mm slim height drive bay in here. This comes with a 1 terabyte 5400 RPM drive at the factory and a 16 gig caching drive M2 made by SanDisk on it. So if you're adventurous, I'm sure I know some of you folks do this, you could try putting a big mSATA SSD inside there if you want to keep that big terabyte hard drive. Now, Lenovo always says it's really meant for caching. You know, we don't guarantee it's going to work, but I've heard people do that with other ThinkPads just fine. Or you can replace that 2.5-inch drive pretty easily with an SSD drive, which is actually what I've done to this one already. Just put in a Samsung Evo 840 SSD drive in place of the terabyte hard drive. But you can have the best of both worlds. Also inside is the usual socketed Intel Wi-Fi 7260 AC card, so that's about as good as you can get these days in terms of internal connectivity. So nice as an Ultrabook that you can actually, well, upgrade stuff. Inside is all ThinkPad goodness in terms of the keyboard. This is, again, a lift and lock keyboard, so when you yoga it, keys actually lock in place so you won't feel them squiggling against your fingers. They're still exposed for those of you who are bothered by the whole yoga experience. That's not going to change right here. Trackpad's also disabled once you yoga this into different orientations, but you can see the usual awesome Lenovo AccuType kind of style keys here with the smile-shaped keys. Each one has a little sculpting. It indents a little bit. Great tactile feel. The keys just have a great deal of movement for a relatively slim product. Backlighting, hit the FN and the spacebar, and you have 2-stage of backlighting on this. Superb keyboard. If you're a person who spends a lot of time writing, this is the kind of keyboard you're just going to love. Just lovely stuff. Trackpad too. Also, I know there's those of you who still miss the old style trackpad that had the button clickers on the top and the bottom. Lenovo has gone to a buttonless design. It's a pretty audible click. Noticeable smooth movement, a little bit smoother actually than the Yoga 12.5-inch model, which was a little bit more space constrained. I think they really had not much room to work with for movement here. Anyway, works well. Always one of my favorite trackpads. It comes closer to Mac trackpads running Mac OS X than anything else here. It's not too slippery a surface. It's very responsive. It's very stable. It's good for precise selection, text, things like that. And for those of you who still like the eraser stick pointer, you've still got it right up there. And of course, these top areas also work as click buttons when you're using it with the track point. Generally speaking, the unit is silent. You're not hearing it right now. It does have a fan inside it. It is a standard Intel Core i5 machine, so it's not a fanless design. The NVIDIA GT840M graphics, they can heat things up some, and you'll feel it on the underside in this section. That's where the GPU is, and we have an internal slice that we're going to splice in so you can see where all the components are located. And the main fan assembly is over the CPU, and you'll see an extended heatsink that runs over the GPU. Now, I did game with this. I played about 40 minutes of Metro Last Light, which was a pretty demanding game in its day, so that in itself, the performance was quite good. But the GPU's max temperature that it reached was 75 degrees Celsius, which is actually pretty darn good and not very hot at all. And the core temperatures of the CPU are around 59, 58 degrees centigrade. So it manages, you will hear the fan kick in, certainly if you're gaming, but it's a nicely tuned fan. It's not whiny, it's not grating, anything like that, but it's audible. for something that's not meant to be a gaming machine, I would say Lenovo did a good job with the thermals on this. And in terms of throttling on it, really didn't see a problem with that. Again, after 40 minutes of Metro, if you're going to have some throttling, you're going to notice it. And we have fraps running, and the frame rate stayed pretty consistent on this. So good job there for engineering on Lenovo's side. This runs Windows 8.1. As you can see, we have the traditional desktop there, and we have the usual live tile interface as well. And it's 10 points of multi-touch. Once again, there's no pen, because I know you guys are going to ask about the pen. No pen, can't do it, no. It's a gorgeous 1920 by 1080 IPS display. The ThinkPad Yoga, the 12.5-inch model, it had a nice display. The one with the pen, the one that we had a semi-matte coating on it. This one is completely glossy, so those of you who hate glare, well, this does have glare. However, this one has a wider color gamut. Really pleased and impressed with the color gamut on this. So here's the color gamut. Our Spider 4 Pro Colorimeter measures that. That's a hardware tool that works in conjunction with software to measure the display characteristics. 91% of sRGB and 71% of Adobe RGB. Now the top panels that we see in the best laptops typically are about 95% of sRGB and 75% of Adobe RGB. For 4%, I'm really not going to make a big difference about that. Just a little bit odd, honestly, since they're all so pegged in at that. For brightness, this did very well. 300 nits of brightness and nice and evenly lit, not light bleed anywhere that you can see. Contrast ratio is good at 700:1, and black levels are pretty decent at 0.43. So as a display that somebody who is working professionally with graphics could use, this would certainly do it. For those of you who just really like eye-popping colors in movies, nice contrast, good saturation, you've got it here. And again, it beats the original ThinkPad Yoga in terms of colors. The original ThinkPad Yoga was also a very bright display, so you're not getting much different there in terms of brightness on it. So yes, you can use it as a tablet too if you want, though I think most of you are probably going to pick this up a little bit, put it on a table, and use it like that, where it's pretty handy. You can just, interact with it, do things. You get the idea. Like that. But you can use it as a straight tablet if you wish to. 56 watt-hour battery inside, comes with a 65-watt compact charger. It has to have a decent wattage charger because it has to power that dedicated graphics too, to make sure it's got enough juice to run both the GPU, dedicated GPU, and the CPU together. Charger is fairly compact, as you can see, so that's not a real burden in your bag. And like I said, it uses Lenovo's new rectangular style charging connector. Lenovo claims 8 hours of use on a charge. Now, of course, that depends on what you're doing. If you are going to try to play Borderlands 2 on the road and you're getting the dedicated GPU involved in that process there for it, well, you're not going to get 8 hours. But if you are using this on the road and you're doing usual word processing, email, that sort of thing, then I would say about 6.5 hours, and that's at 50% brightness with Wi-Fi turned on. By the way, this also has Bluetooth 4.0. So as Ultrabooks go, decent, not amazing battery life. They were pretty decent. If you're pretty conservative with your power settings, I would imagine you could really easily actually get to 7, maybe even 7.5 hours on this, which is pretty impressive given how bright it is. If you wanted to run it at, say, 30% or 20% brightness, as long as you're not in an incredibly bright environment, you could do that. Obviously, you can turn off wireless, and you can use something other than the standard Lenovo balanced power mode on this. Now, for those of you who are Best Buy shoppers, you know the Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro is coming to Best Buy very soon also, and also Lenovo's website. And that's this guy here, just so you can see the difference in comparison. Thinner and lighter, 2.6 pounds, very skinny. The whole point of this product really is to be as thin and light as possible. Horsepower actually goes down. The 5th generation Haswell CPU that's used in here, the M series, is really designed more for tablets. And God knows, this is almost a tablet. It's so skinny. So you're not going to get the same horsepower or the same upgradable internals. You will get the pretty weird watch band hinge over here. And it too, of course, Yoga's, because it's a Yoga. Obviously, a difference in design aesthetic here. Certainly a flashier looking product. Like I said, not as powerful, not as upgradable. This will also cost more. Our lovely Yoga 14 is $1,099 at Best Buy. Now, it's supposed to be $11.99, but you know, Best Buy, they tend to have these sales or perma sales, and sometimes at launch they'll even do that, which is nice. So, now you've seen them together. In terms of the practicality of resolution, I know for a while the Ultras UHD, crazy resolution kind of displays out there, really QHD, QHD Plus, were all the rage last year. And I think that's kind of tapering off because Windows 8.1 and, well, it itself in the Metro Live Tile interface handles it. But legacy Windows applications, not so much. I think that 1920 by 1080 on 14 inches is just the bee's knees, honestly. Things are viewable here. We've got 125% scaling right now. Everything is easy to see, but it's not overly huge. You can obviously have two windows side by side running like this, which is very practical. And the icons are actually a manageable size. You can see them, you can read the labels, all that sort of thing. So thumbs up for the display there in terms of practicality. No, I really don't want to see the 3200 by 1800 display that the Yoga 3 Pro has. In terms of performance, this guy manages with the conventional spinning hard drive, because remember, PC Mark really doesn't like spinning hard drives. They like SSDs, and they give a much higher score. Scores 3733. In our full written review, I'll give you the benchmark with the Samsung Evo SSD in its place. Believe me, it's going to be considerably higher. For 3D Mark 11, using the NVIDIA GT840M there for that test, on the performance mode, 2458. That's pretty darn good. Again, it's mid-range graphics. This is not an Asus Republic of Gamers. This is not an Alienware. That's not the kind of machine it is. But given the size, it's actually pretty impressive graphical performance. For Geekbench 3, pretty much standard stuff for the Core i5. That just looks at the CPU. 2555 for the single core, and multi-core 4957. And it's an interesting machine at that, because you've got the standard ULV Ultrabook Core i5 dual-core CPU in here, paired with some mid-range dedicated graphics. So when it comes to first-person shooters, that's where you're going to see the real advantage here, because that relies heavily on the graphics card. If you're playing something like Civ 5, where that's really more computationally heavy there, because it has to compute the turns and what all the other civilizations are doing, you're not going to notice much of a difference there. Really, in terms of graphics, the Intel HD 4400 gets the job done just fine there. It's really about computation. You know, the usual Lenovo software is on here. Their ThinkVantage management tools. They don't bloat up the ThinkPad line quite as much as they do the consumer IdeaPad line and, say, the Yoga 2 Pro, Yoga 3 Pro. So nice, clean stuff. The ThinkVantage tools are very good for keeping your drivers updated without being, well, nagged to death. They do have a couple of add-ons here. For those folks who are missing the Start menu, they have this Start menu add-on over here. You know, there are third-party Start menu replacements for Windows 8. But to have one on the machine is helpful for some folks who actually don't know about that stuff. So you do get that pre-installed here. And we've got Kindle and a couple of other things, but really not too much. One thing I have to talk about is the speakers. The stereo speakers are on each side right here. And I've taken this apart, and the drivers don't look that immense, and the slits that open up to let the speaker sound out aren't that big. This thing is incredibly loud. Let's listen to a video review so you can hear that.
This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, the premier phablet, back again for 2014 in its fourth iteration.
That's only 36%.
Still a 5.7-inch display, but the resolution goes up to 2560 by 1440. And we get metal around the sides. A little harder to tell with the white model here because it has a white finish on top, but still it gives it a nice look.
You get the idea. This is a very loud little laptop, and it's reasonably full sounding too. I mean, no, it's not an external 5.1 speaker system, but as laptops go, it's pretty full and it's frighteningly loud, something you wouldn't expect from a business laptop. So if you're doing presentations in noisy places, this thing will probably shout over the people in the room who are bored and talking among themselves. For those of you who aren't familiar with the one-link dock, before we get into gaming, this is the first generation model. It's around $99, and there's also a second generation model. You can stand it upright, USB ports, 2 of them on the front, 3.0, headphone jack. Back, more USB ports, Ethernet, full-size HDMI, way to charge your laptop up. Power button, up top. Pretty reasonable for what it is. So let's get into Metro. Last light here.
Just a year ago, I stood on top of the TV tower and saw missiles raining.
Looks like we pretty much cleaned the place. How are you?
First, let's take a look at our game settings. Running at full HD 1920 by 1080, you can see we have quality set to low, SSAA is turned off, texture filtering 4x, motion blur is normal, tessellation is off. You can see our frame rates are running from the upper 30s, sometimes as high as the low 50s here, depending what's going on. It actually looks really nice. And given that this is still a fairly demanding game, it works surprisingly well. This can also handle Tomb Raider, the latest Tomb Raider game. We've tested that, and again at full HD settings, but low for the quality settings on that. You can get playable frame rates at least in the 30s to a bit above. Obviously Skyrim, you can even play that with Intel HD 4400 graphics, so that does work, and you're going to gain at least 10 frames per second playing with the dedicated graphics in this model. Civ 5 looks beautiful as well, touch enabled, and we're not even going to bother showing it here because that will run on even HD 4400 graphics again. That's really more CPU intensive, but it is nice on the 14-inch IPS display just to look at. So this is a pretty unique machine. It's a 14-inch Ultrabook. It's a yogaing tablet with presentation mode. It's a light gaming machine with NVIDIA GT 840M graphics. It's also business durable with an excellent keyboard. It's kind of like the best of all worlds. For those of you who have a moderate gaming laptop, you know, not real serious, not a gorgeous Alienware, but you have just an okay gaming laptop and you want an Ultrabook, this could really do the job of both. Now, if you want to play the very latest, most demanding titles at maximum settings, obviously this still isn't the machine for you. You need a gaming laptop to do that. But for, you know, everybody who has those, I just want to have some fun once in a while and get some decent looking graphics and frame rates going, it does the job. It's really a pretty amazing piece of hardware. Again, as configured, there's only one model available right now, whether you get it through a Lenovo or through Best Buy, and has a 1 terabyte hard drive inside, a 16 gig caching SSD, 8 gigs of RAM inside, full HD touchscreen IPS is standard with this, Wi-Fi AC, Bluetooth as well, and sorry, no 3G, 4G option on this guy. $10.99, it's a real solid, do-it-all kind of MacGyver laptop for the price, honestly. So that's the Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga. It's available now. You can get it direct from Lenovo's website, or if you want to get it from a retailer, this is exclusive to Best Buy in the United States. Again, like I said, definitely recommend it. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.